one thing. Politicians have got this impression that young people don't vote. And this is quite young, so parts of the country are quite young, certainly where I come from, it's a younger, parts of London where I come from. There's more young people than there are older people, but the older people get all the attention because they vote. They call it the grey vote, because they turn up and vote. And that's why I think currently there's a big debate about cutting down the benefits for other people, but older people over retirement are not being touched. So they get to keep everything, which I'm not saying it's bad or it's good. I'm just merely pointing out that politicians of all colours don't want to take on the grey vote because they know their votes matter because they all turn out and vote. And that's my experience as someone who's campaigned for many years. I know that older people will vote. Younger people don't tend to vote because of some of the things you said, and some of you said we don't listen to. But then it's a vicious circle. If you were all to vote, if you got to vote at 16, which I hope you do, young people do, and young people really got engaged and turned out and voted and made a point of telling politicians these are the things that I care about, and you're not listening, I guarantee you would start to be listened to.
Yes, something. Lots of hands going up now. Can you raise your hand again? There is something here.
Hi, sorry, is it Mel?
No.
You said earlier that you feel that people need to get their hands dirty before becoming members of Parliament. But do you think that could therefore lead to young people who've been represented next if they have to have loads of experience in the world of work or becoming members of Parliament?
Well, I meant MPs. I tend to think it's good for an MP to have had another job, to have had a profession, to go out to work, so they know what it's like, outside in the real world. Because here in Westminster, life isn't like it is outside. It is a bit of a bubble. People are quite protected from what people are facing outside day to day. So when they're passing laws that affect everyone in the country, I think they should have some experience of what it's like to live, work, to have all those experiences. With local councils, you can work, it's not seen as a full-time job. I worked, I carried on working, and I was a councillor, and my children were quite young. So you do get a very good idea, because you carry on with what you do as you're on council, and you tend to be, you meet in the evenings when you do your casework and that sort of thing, your surgeries on the weekend. So I was talking, when I talked about that, I was talking specifically about MPs, not councillors. I think local councils, I think the average age is something like, I might be pushing 60 now, I think, in some areas. They really are crying out for young people to get onto local councils. And as Christina said to you, wasn't it? If you are interested in becoming a local councillor, I think all political parties would really, really welcome you. Really grab you with both hands and drag you in, I think. In my experience.
Okay, there's the young man there. Can you get up so that, yeah.
My name's Jacob. I'd just like to highlight a few things. As I think you're probably aware, 16 and 17-year-olds are getting the vote for the referendum next year on Scottish independence. In my opinion, that's a plot by the Scottish Government to try and push the yes vote further forward, because I think the Scottish Government know quite fine well that 16 and 17-year-olds don't necessarily look into politics deeply enough, and what they do is they make rash decisions on things that they think they believe and things that their parents believe and things that are being forced on them. They'll take facts from any political party at a grasp and won't actually look into the other sides. So what we end up with is we end up with people voting on a side that is completely imbalanced because they've not looked at each side of the argument. But then when you're talking about young people getting involved in politics, I don't know whether you have it down here, but what we have in Scotland is we have the Scottish Youth Parliament. So it gives people an idea to actually take the roles that MSPs play and do them themselves as MSYPs. So I think that giving young people the vote and getting them more involved in politics is something that needs to be done from higher up in the political system. But it's something that we should probably stick at 18, because if you go down to 16, then why not go to 15, why not go to 14? And eventually it just becomes ridiculous, because there's people that are old enough, that are 60s and 70s, that are not making rational decisions. There's people that are too young to make not making rational decisions. So you can't really say who's to vote and who's not to vote, because it just gets ridiculous at a point.
mentioned how like it's not acceptable that only 22% of Parliament is made up of female MPs, and how like it's not diverse enough. But who do you think is to blame for it? Do you think it's society's fault, or do you think it's like the impression that women get that they're not confident enough to actually go forward with those roles?
Are you suggesting that people aren't pushing themselves forward enough?
I just wondering who you think is to blame. Who you think is to blame for it? Like, what is the causing factor for the situation that we're in?
I think it's multifactored. Yes, my experience when I was doing selection, that actually I think it was quite easy. 16% of women came forward, 16% of women asked what we call the selection board. But what didn't happen is 16% of women necessarily get into what we call safe seats. They might have got into not such good seats, but they didn't get into safe seats. Now that was 12 years ago. And actually things have moved forward hugely. I don't know if Mo will support me in this. I mean, I remember when I first started, women candidates were literally, I remember, and this is honest to God true, I'm not going to tell you anything that's not true. One woman candidate came to me and she was really upset because at the selection meeting, some man had come up to her and asked her what kind of knickers she wore. That existed 12 years ago. So think how we are moving on. Okay, so we really are moving on. So there was at one stage a lot of resistance in what we call the local parties. But I think there's less of that now. What we do need is good candidates coming forward, and we do need to have them properly prepared. And they do need, especially those who are outside Westminster bubble, they do need to be properly supported. And actually, I think a lot more can be done there.
I think there are not enough women coming forward, but there's a reason for that. The reason is that it's very hard. When I was, about 10 years ago, I suppose, that I was considering standing as an MP. It was very hard for me because I was asked to go for selection meetings all around the country, Norfolk. I'm based in North London, so I've got small children. It's very hard for me. If I was selected somewhere, Cornwall or Norfolk, places where we have MPs and where I'd have a chance, you've got to move there. You've got to go and, you've got to be there. You can't, if you're selected. There's no point going there at weekends. So really, you have to uproot your life. And if you've got a family and a job and responsibilities, as I do, it's very difficult. It's easier for single people, usually single men, to do that, and they feel more confident in doing that. But it's very, very hard. So I think fewer women come forward because they have got responsibilities, they've got more caring responsibilities. I always used to say, like a lot of the male MPs, it's all right for them, they've got a wife home, looking after the children and all the rest of it, while they gallivant around the country trying to get a seat. It's not the same. I think it's harder for women, and that's why there's been more of a push. And Christine is absolutely right. All political parties have actually tried to do more. This is what we call about positive action as well. And it's all very well saying you create a level playing field, but for some people, that level playing field is not level. Because a good example is for disabilities. If you say we're going to treat everyone the same, then actually, and you don't think about disabled access, you don't think about all those sorts of things, then you're actually not, you're discriminating against people with a disability. So you have to consider what is accessible for some people isn't for the others. So for example, if a woman wants to go there, she's got children, you've got to be prepared to pay for her childcare to do that, otherwise how can she afford to go out and do that? So there are lots of factors. Also, I think the political parties are the gatekeepers. They're the ones who decide where to select. So they know the winnable seats. And if they're not doing their part to make sure there are more women and underrepresented groups, I think minorities have a chance even of being selected into the winnable seats where they know that their party can win. If they're not making the effort, if they're just selecting, shortlisting all male white shortlists, then nothing's going to change. There's been a big push, certainly I've pushed it within my party, but others, that they can't do that anymore. They have to have they have to demonstrate they've got more of a plurality when they're shortlisting and then when they're selecting. And they're not allowed to ask the sort of questions.
But it was a long time ago.
It was 12 years ago. It was 12 years, you think about it, it's not that long ago. And of course women were asked questions like, who's going to look after your children if you become an MP? Man's not asked that question. So it's about it's about creating a level playing field, but making sure there's equal opportunity for everybody. in the system. But as I say, women are reluctant to come forward. Also, politics is seen as very aggressive. People watch Prime Minister's Question Time, they think that's politics. You know, half an hour each week, sort of a load of men shouting at each other. It puts a lot of women off, actually. It puts me off. I go and sit and listen sometimes, and I can't hear. I don't know how they can hear themselves thinking there. So in the House of Lords, it's a bit more genteel and refined. People actually sit and listen to it. It's very, very unusual. It's quite novel. People actually listen to what someone says, so you've got to make sure you know what you're talking about.
So on that, can I ask? No, I've got lots of questions, but very little time. But very quick question: how many of you watch Question Time? How many of you think it's great? Prime Minister's Question Time. Sorry. No, not Question Time. The bimbo thing. No, Prime Minister's Question Time. Not many of you. Well, don't watch it then, because Meryl's saying it's really it's amazing theatre. It is amazing theatre, but it isn't. I've got a lady here. Now, what I'm going to do is collect 3 or 4 questions and then ask both of the speakers to respond to them together.
Hello, I'm Helen from Bedford. I'm a little bit more cynical than you perhaps about how things have changed. I don't think things are any easier for women now than they were in the 70s, to be frank. And I'm doing my little bit to level the playing field. In that when I brought my group here today, I only brought my girls. I left all the boys behind. Is that a good thing to have done or a bad thing?
I'm going to ask these 2 young women to say something. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Aura, and I just really wanted to know, because you, both of you are politicians, and therefore you're influential women, what exactly do you think can be done to make women more seen as equals? Because, and I'm not just talking politics-wise, but in society in general, because you guys are more influential, so what exactly can be done?
All right. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Fumi. I was just wondering, do you think Britain is ready to see a Prime Minister from an ethnic minority?
Good question. Will the young man at the back raise your hand?
Regarding what Christina said about Russell Brand's interview with Paxton, as I do agree with you, do you not think that since Nick Clegg's, since his betrayal for a lot of young people, do you not think that that just furthers the disappointment that young people do have in the voting system?
Okay, I've got, oh my God, yes, you have been, so many, why did you take so long to ask these questions? You're getting warmed up, yes, okay.
Hi there. We've spoken a lot about getting women into politics and ethnic minorities into politics. Do you think that a lot needs to be done for women once they are in politics? So within Parliament, it's a very masculine environment, and perhaps there isn't enough opportunity for MPs to get to ministerial positions, to get to their higher positions, and do you think a lot needs to be done within Parliament itself?
One final question at the back, and then we'll have to stop and ask Christina and Daryl to respond to whatever bits you want to respond to. Please.
Would either of you say that a person's background is more important, as in class, is more important than their actual race in trying to get into politics?
Okay. Plenty of wonderful questions, and now do you want to start?
Okay, the lady asked, what can we do to make women more equal? I think the more women you have in politics, I know there are a lot of men who care about this as well, but the more women you have involved in politics, sitting around the table where the decisions are taken, in positions of influence, the more equal it will become. And if you look at history of from the time that women were first elected and all the different legislation that's been brought in terms of the equal pay act, all those things, there's still a lot to do. Women are still underpaid less than men, they're still disadvantaged in many ways. There's still a lot to be done. And I think believing more women working with men, women really now are very enlightened and understands. I'm not going to say all men, they're not. There's some very good men that I work with MPs from all parties who are very conscious of this and work very hard. But I just do feel that unless more women do have that confidence to come forward and get involved, get stuck in, I don't think it's going to, we should leave it to men to make decisions that affect mainly women's lives as well. That's what happens otherwise. That's the first point. And the other thing is about, somebody asked about would a ethnic minority, was it Femi, become Prime Minister? I don't see why not. I mean, people 10 years ago would never have dreamt he'd be a black president. I never dreamt that. It's quite astonishing, somewhere like America, that only recently, in the 60s, after the civil rights movement, where black people were not vote in the 60s, to have a black Prime Minister. So barely 40 years later, was it 60s? Yes, that's right, to be president. I don't see why not. It's just being president, I think that sounds like the political system here is harder actually to get involved, as we've already talked about, than it is in America. The presidential system, like from the Senate, is actually it's a different path. So it does allow for more diversity to come through. Where here we're a bit more entrenched in tradition, but I think we can break loose in that. So yes, I do think it's possible, and I hope it will be one day. And the young man, sorry I didn't catch your name, asked about Nick who I know. Perhaps I feel I should say something about this. He's a important friend of mine. You see, when the Lib Dems stood on a general election before their manifesto, their manifesto was to abolish tuition fees. When you go into a coalition, it's happening in Germany now. There's a three-party coalition probably now. They're still in negotiations. Angela Merkel's won the election, but they're going to have a parliament. They have to then, they're horse trading at the moment. What's going to be their programme for government. So what you have to do is decide an agreement, become an agreement on a coalition agreement. And we're the junior partner, we're a small party. That was not accepted. Had it been a Liberal Democrat government, that would have been there. But when you go into coalition, you have to make compromises. So that was in our manifesto, it wasn't the Conservative manifesto. And in fact, the Labour Party who left office, they'd commissioned a whole inquiry into tuition fees. Had they won, they admitted they would have done exactly the same. They would have put fees up because it became unsustainable. Universities just couldn't carry on with as they were. There was huge pressure. I'm not making excuses, I don't think people should make promises they can't keep. And I think it's been a bitter lesson. But I don't think Nick Clegg expected to be Deputy Prime Minister. It's just the way it panned out. No one party won the election. No one won the election, put it that way. There's no one party, so there had to be a compromise while we've got a coalition, and that's what happened. Certain things were promised, which all parties were promised and didn't deliver. And support. Can I just do the last one, then you can go. I think it was the young woman there. That was a very good question. You're asking about once women are selected, should they be? Yes, I think you're absolutely right. I think the turnover rate for women dropping out, they serve a term. And they find it so difficult, they serve a 4 or 5 year term as an MP, and a lot of them drop out quicker that I've noticed, because they find it harder, and not often. If you look at the cabinet now, Cameron did promise that we'd have more women. There are very few women in the cabinet. I can't believe that of all the women in Parliament, there aren't enough women who've got a certain talent and the ability to be cabinet members. I just can't believe that, and I don't accept that. I think it's completely wrong. I don't think there is a level playing field for women. A very interesting statistic I discovered recently. If you were to add up all the women that have ever been voted as MPs from the very first time they were allowed to be elected, which I think was 1928, I think it's 1920, I can't remember the exact date, 1928. If you were to add up all the women who had ever been elected MPs, ever, there would only be 361. They would still not be half of what we have in Parliament now. I thought that was quite a shocking statistic. So that's, that puts it into contrast for you. I'm talking about not, have ever been, not the ones that have been elected over and over. I'm talking about ever been elected. Would only be 361. We have 665, I think, MPs. So that sort of gives you a perspective. And in fact, at one time, there were more male MPs called David than there were women MPs. A little known fact. Thank you. Class, yes, I think class is very much like we do not have enough MPs who come from working class backgrounds. It's become very elitist. And this is where many ethnic minorities do come, like my family, come from working class backgrounds. So it's even harder. I feel they're doubly disadvantaged. So I think we need to do far more on that, on the working class issue. Thank you.
Okay, shall I rattle through these? Helen, were you right to leave the boys behind? Well, if you were a boy, you would think no. If you were a girl, you'd think yes. So, but yes, I do applaud you for encouraging them the girls to come, and all the girls who wanted to come. Arrow, is that how you pronounce it? Yes, there needs to be a lot more done to encourage equality, and actually, it still annoys me that if there is some sort of political discourse, a woman raises her voice, she is suddenly labelled emotional, or screaming, or screeching.
I'm called aggressive.
Oh, aggressive. Whereas a man is regarded as being strong, yes, and assertive. So that, even at that level, yes, I really don't like it. Prime Minister from ethnic minority, absolutely yes. Who asked that question? Yes. And don't forget something. Now I know it's a little bit of a cheeky one, but we have already had a Prime Minister who came certainly from a diverse religion background, and that was Disraeli. Admittedly, he had to go through the hoops so that he could be, become Prime Minister, but he was from a religious ethnic background, hence the name Disraeli. Nick Clegg, it's not for me to answer. The only thing I would say is Nick Clegg has been quite adept at hanging on to what he does want, but the actual question was, has this has acted as a disincentive for young people? Yeah, I think it has, but then all of us, as Meryl said, lost something in the coalition. All of us, that's what unfortunately the coalition contract is all about. So there's been a lot of losses and wins on either side, not just for young people. But a straight question, I'm sure it has been a disincentive. Who was it who said should be more support for women in Parliament? Because I think I love you. Because yes, absolutely. And actually, I'll put these next two together. I really decry the fact there's no professional development in politics. Look at any other serious occupation, whether it's lawyers, surgeons, teachers, whatever, there is an element of professional development throughout the career. There is nothing in politics, absolutely nothing. You become an MP and then you either have to sink or swim. And I think that is one of the most disgraceful things. So in fact, actually, going on to the next question, or yes, there should have been more sort of women at cabinet level. So if David Cameron would like to know, I'm very happy to accept being the first cabinet woman for professional development for politicians. I agree, yes, class over race, yes. Class is a major, has been a major problem, and people should be encouraged to come forward. I believe, as I said at the beginning, in diversity for everyone. And was there one more? If I missed anything out? No? Oh, yeah, that's it. I think I've covered everything. If I haven't, sorry.
Thank you very much, both, and shall we give them a big hand?
Just a last word. This was an event that's part of Parliament Week, as you can see behind you. And there you will find forms on your chairs, which are evaluation forms. So please do fill them and give them back to the Parliament Week representatives before you leave them. There's a reception just next door.
Who's that?